May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Holy One, Emmanuel. Amen. There are moments in our lives and in history, moments both small and monumental, that change everything. Perhaps you have experienced such a moment in your own life. I remember the first time I saw a nativity scene. I was 6 years old. I was playing with my friends Jeffrey and Matthew, which I did almost every day. Both of our families put up our Christmas trees at the same time at the beginning of December. And as the weeks went by, more and more presents were accumulating under my family's tree, but there was nothing under their tree. And I was beginning to worry that my friends would not receive any presents at Christmas time. Then about a week before Christmas, I walked into their house and I could see that there was something under the tree. I ran over, knelt, and stared. I had no idea what it was. There was a miniature wooden barn with grass on top, miniature people who were dressed weirdly, and a baby lying in what looked like straw. What kind of present is this? I wondered. I have no idea how long I had been staring at the barn, but at some point, Mrs. Corbett came and sat beside me and started telling me about these people, Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus, the shepherds and the Magi. And as she was telling me about them, she was telling me the story of Jesus' birth. And afterwards, she put baby Jesus in my hand. Now I was confused, and I asked, "But why is this under the Christmas tree?" "Baby Jesus is the gift that we celebrate at Christmas time," she said. I did not grow up in a church-going family, and I really didn't know much about God. But I remember that moment with Mrs. Corbett and hearing the story for the first time. That moment changed everything for me. And it was a moment 2,000 years ago that changed everything. A moment when something new emerged. It was the moment when God broke into the world, becoming human. In the birth of Jesus, God gave the gift of grace, which is God's unending flow of love. And it disrupts old patterns and brings new ones to life. We live in a moment when God is not part of our public discourse or our shared public life. God is dismissed. And when there is a conversation of God, it tends to oscillate between God doesn't exist to, well, if God exists, then God's irrelevant. Look at the mess the world is in. What difference does God make? And you may find yourself somewhere between these two ends of the continuum. And yes, we can look around the world and see darkness and chaos and wonder if Jesus' birth actually changed anything. The same patterns of destruction and war and greed and violence and marginalization are repeated over and over again. And yet, if God didn't matter, we would not be here tonight. There is something more that we seek. And while some of us tonight may not name the longing that we have in our hearts as God, the longing remains nevertheless. Tonight we are like the shepherds gathering to see the infant who was born, to be part of a holy night in which everything changed. a night that shattered the illusion that God doesn't care, that God is distant, that it is on our shoulders to fix the world's problems, that some people are more important than other people, that we are not worthy of love and peace and justice. Christmas is a celebration of a moment 2,000 years ago in which the gift of grace was given, marking a new pattern. A pattern of life in which God is here with us, a life that resists the dynamic of power and greed and violence, a life in which everyone is loved, everyone deserves peace, everyone deserves justice. And Christmas is also a moment when we are invited to say, yes, we believe, and we embrace the gift and seek to live in harmony with it. That gift of grace given so long ago matters. God matters. I like how one priest describes grace as God's official job description. And he writes, "Grace is the goodness glue that holds all things together. It is what God does to keep whole all things God has made in love." In case you missed it the first time I said it, grace is God's unending love towards us. And once we have been touched by grace, we are forever changed. When we are touched by grace, we are drawn into the mystery of God becoming human. The mystery of God choosing to share life with all of creation, to transform the world with us, not for us. We begin to experience God not as a transactional love, not as a test that what we know about God or what we don't know about God, and not a questioning whether we are worthy enough to be loved. Rather, it is an encounter with the divine in which we experience ourselves and others as beloved. We begin to see God moving in our lives and in the world in ways that were previously invisible to us. We begin to see that God's strength is tenderness, and we share that tenderness with others. Grace moves us beyond ourselves to the world around us, and our heart is drawn to the life we share in common. This is a grace-filled life, seeking to be more loving, more trusting, more tender. It is also joining the work that Jesus came to do. And he came with a mission: peace and justice, wholeness and restoration. And his mission becomes our mission. And it is our mission to respond to hatred with love, to doubt with faith, to falsehood with truth. Where there is pain, we bring comfort. Where there is despair, we bring hope. Where there is darkness, we bring light. We are called to be God's instrument of grace in the world. And our journey as bearers of grace begins on this holy night. Friends, perhaps we can look at the manger tonight as if it is our first time. Can you imagine holding the baby Jesus in your hand? Can you feel God's loving grace flowing towards you? You are God's beloved one. May you experience Jesus' grace on this holy night, and may you hold it in your heart. Amen.